In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
But I do ask every publisher, every editor, and every newsman in the nation to re-examine his own standards and to recognize the nature of our country's peril. In time of war, the government and the press have customarily joined in an effort based largely on self-discipline to prevent unauthorized disclosures to the enemy. In times of clear and present danger, the courts have held that even the privileged rights of the First Amendment must yield to the public's need for national security. Today, no war has been declared, and however fierce the struggle may be, it may never be declared in the traditional fashion. Our way of life is under attack. Those who make themselves our enemy are advancing around the globe. The survival of our friends is in danger, and yet no war has been declared. No borders have been crossed by marching troops. No missiles have been fired. If the press is awaiting a declaration of war before it imposes the self-discipline of combat conditions, then I can only say that no war ever posed a greater threat to our security. If you are awaiting a finding of clear and present danger, then I can only say that the danger has never been more clear, and its presence has never been more imminent.
It's time to recognize that we've come to a turning point. We're threatened with an economic calamity of tremendous proportions, and the old business-as-usual treatment can't save us. Together, we must chart a different course. We must increase productivity. That means making it possible for industry to modernize and make use of the technology which we ourselves invented. That means putting Americans back to work, and that means, above all, bringing government spending back within government revenues, which is the only way, together with increased productivity, that we can reduce and, yes, eliminate inflation.
The only thing that can stop this corrupt machine is you. The only force strong enough to save our country is us. The only people brave enough to vote out this corrupt establishment is you, the American people. I'm doing this for the people and for the movement, and we will take back this country for you, and we will make America great again.
Hello, and welcome back to Inform America, formerly Inform New Hampshire. I want to make sure we get that out. My name's Rich Merrett, your host. Co-hosting today is Pat Murphy with me. I want to ask that you turn to nationallibertyalliance.org, try to help their efforts out. Now is the time. You know, it reminds me of a sentence I learned way back in typing class. Now is the time for all good men to come to the aid of their party. Only it's not so much a party as it is America. It's very true. Help out the National Liberty Alliance. They're trying to get the books to the sheriffs. God knows the sheriffs need to know the law because the law hasn't been taught in this country for decades and decades. Secondarily, since we have changed the name, please go to YouTube, Inform America, and subscribe to the channel. We used to have hundreds and hundreds of subscribers. We don't anymore because we changed the name. So go to Inform America. Please subscribe to the channel. Check us out on YouTube. Facebook, and like us there. We have a Inform America page. And lastly, please go to inform-america.org, our website, and check that out too. Jim McKinley's done a phenomenal job. A wealth of information is in there. A wealth of information, not to mention our shows too. But check it out. And I'm sure you'll be pleased with some of the information that we have for you. The other thing I want to mention briefly before we go on is now is the time to stand. Now, today, not tomorrow, yesterday, tomorrow, now. It's the time to stand. Your presidents, all of them, as you just heard in the opening, have said, we need your help. Only you can do it. You, the American people, because it's our government, it's our country. It's all about us. It's our lives. We're not spectators here watching TV. This is about us. We need to do something about it. So I'm asking people to stand. Put a stop to it. Tell your local politicians, forget the cesspool in Washington, D.C. I think they're going down. But here locally, we need to stop the people, the corruption. It's crazy. With that, we'll move on with the show. And Pat, if you want to open it up with whatever you'd like to, because God knows there's plenty of topics.
A lot of stuff going on, and like Richie said, it's time to stand up, people. I think we've all had enough. You just watch a massive, horrific corruption in this country, especially this stuff lately with all these accusations of pedophilia and this whole system that's designed to capture and control politicians that's gone on for so long. It's just, it's monstrous.
It's gotten way out of control.
It's getting way out of
control. In the past 20, 30 years, way out of control. Well, when you have presidents of the United States who are participating in this, and I'll leave that to you to decide which ones they are, that's got to tell you that things are pretty bad. I don't know what else will. When little children are being abused by presidents of the United States. I'm sure that's gone on for centuries, but not to the extent it is now.
Yeah, it's gone on. It's gone on for a long time, and you could take a look at the history of Ireland, and you look at all the kids that disappeared, hundreds of years ago in the 1640s under Cromwell. There's probably 80 or 90,000 Irish youngsters and young men and women pulled out of Ireland and sent to the West Indies to work as slaves and to be objects of abuse. Some of those people are still alive today. They're referred to as redlegs. They're intermarried with the local population. So it's gone on for a long time. Bristol in England was a major slave hunting area. For the longest time, where that was actually a very large trade, and people tend not to know about. So this isn't something that's new, but it's so expansive, it's so monumental. What Trump has done, this is something that, of course, the media won't give him credit for. He's shut down a lot of this, and you've had thousands and thousands of arrests worldwide of these rings that are very large. And we're looking at this one next to him, and we see how it's connected with this guy. Out of the billionaire, what's his name, Rich? Epstein. Yeah, Epstein. And it's interesting to note that the guy, he's supposedly a billionaire and has his own private island and jets and that. People say his office is usually closed and didn't finish college, and there's a lot of questions about what his business really is. And there are a lot of us that tend to think that. It's actually he's a player within the system, and has been rewarded for bringing people in and putting them on video, and in essence capturing them and getting them to do the work of those that are in charge behind the scenes, blackmail, in other words.
Well, I don't know this for a fact, but it's been rumored or reported that trafficking humans is more profitable than trafficking drugs. So if that's the case, that's where he gets his money along with some other people. So
you can see that in Haiti when Laura Silsby got caught with 32 youngsters, and they were scheduled to be shipped out, and I think to go to Saudi Arabia. And they had parents and they had homes, but the country was in a state of disarray from the hurricane and that. And she was ready to get pulled in and wind up in a Huskow, and it was Bill Clinton that got her off the hook. So we're looking at some big players getting pulled into this. And I think that the Trump administration, what it's done, it basically declared war on the deep state. And there's no quarter asked, there's no quarter given. They have to win the conflict with these people that are in government that is all pervasive. So he's declared war on the deep state, and I think that he's actually right now, we're about to see just the level of depravity that these people are involved in. That's huge.
Well, I say it every show, and I don't want to be redundant, but I do want to emphasize the point. When we have the opener of the show, we're talking about 4 presidents warning us. Trump is saying only the people can save it. Well, it's our country. It's our problem. And what bothers me a lot about people right now, and I don't know what it is the problem is ours. It's our problem. You don't sit here and say, well, the pedophilia is going on over there. It's not me. It's not affecting me. Well, the robberies over here, the racism over here, the this over there. It's all affecting us, all of us. And we're all decent people. What we need to do is come together and put this aside and say, okay, The people at the top that are orchestrating this and looking to cause trouble, they want me and you to kill one another or to harm one another. Well, they have no axe to grind with anybody other than the people running this planet. They got to be taken down. And it's only going to happen when the people stand together.
Well, you know, it's they've been subjected to propaganda, you know, for decades. With television, the radio, the media, that's gone off the deep end now with the level of propaganda. And you look at people like Google and cutting out all of the information. It's you reach a point where the people really have to start to get together, talk to each other, and stand up. You're going to lose your whole country. You look at Hong Kong right now, and just the sheer amount of fear that you have in Hong Kong, and it's over the social credit score, and it's over extradition to the mainland, where Google on American taxpayers' funds was set up. So now you have one of the primaries making $100 million a year, Sundar Pichai, going to China. He'll refuse to work with the United States military, but he's going to work with the Chinese, and has built this dragonfly system to literally pinpoint people that have a beef with the regime. So these people are very frightened in Hong Kong. They understand what that system is, where everybody's attached to this iPad. In fact, you can be walking down the street, and if there's somebody that has done something wrong, you're warned to avoid them. So it's a total control. It's terrible.
I laugh, but I'm not surprised by it, Pat.
Well, the thing is, these people know they're going to be singled out, and if it's extradition to China, and here's a country that needs to be investigated. I mean, they talk about Russia. China is the one that has to be investigated with what they have going on. And that's a part of it. You're going to have the same thing here. And here's a guy that's going to give a nation that's killed more people than any country in the history of the world, anywhere from 60 to 100 million people, and he's going to give them a military advantage over the United States. So this country literally is under attack, and it's under attack from people that actually they had made their fortunes here. They had all the benefits of living in this country. It's outrageous. And to me, it's an act of treason. They should be treated like traitors.
Absolutely. Look, I just heard this morning on the radio, and I was going to say it surprised me. I guess it didn't. Instant Messenger, which is Facebook.
Right.
Okay. From now on, they're going to warn you. If you put something out that's offensive, they're going to warn you so that you think about it before you post it.
Yeah,
I'm
wow.
serious. Before you post it, they're going to climb into your head and say, do you really want to do this?
Google had crying sessions when Hillary lost. You could go in a room and say, can you even imagine? You know, and it's if their primaries are standing up and what are we going to do? And this is so horrible. It's amazing. And now they have a whole culture where they're looking for people that have a traditional or a conservative viewpoint.
Yeah.
Right, that simply want to use logic, and they become the enemy. That is something that it has to change radically. We need freedom of the press. We need freedom of expression. And the First Amendment is there for a reason. Well, so you don't have to use the Second Amendment.
Since 1776, a lot of people have died fighting for our rights, our freedoms, and our liberties. I have no intention of rolling over now and telling people, whoever you are up there running the show, yeah, go ahead, you can take them away from me. No, I have every intention of fighting you, whether it's through my words or through my actions. I don't care which, but I will fight you to defend the liberties that a lot of people died for. So that's my final word on that. I'm not a violent person, but like anybody, you're a corner of a rat. It's either fight or flight.
Typically, when you look at the history of modern totalitarian dictatorship, there's different literature that stands out, and they all talk about George Orwell, 1984, as probably the greatest novel of the 20th century. They look at Aldous Huxley, who has a little different angle, writing in the 1930s in Brave New World, that the people are actually going to be so locked into all of these different distractions that they're going to actually enjoy their slavery. But I'll tell you, a really good book from 1920, it doesn't appear till 1924, is Evgeny Zamyatin's We. Somebody that lived in the Russian Revolutionary period. And you read that book, and it talks about, it's fictional, but it's in the middle of all these things going on where they're transforming the whole society. He says a little operation is performed on the human brain, where a small incision is made, and they go in and they extract that part of the brain that deals with human imagination. It's taken out. And so you look at that and say, that's exactly what's been done in this country, where they rely on the iPads. There's fewer kids in the libraries. There's fewer people reading. It's this constant din of propaganda. It's like North Korea. You go to North Korea, you have to have your radio on in your apartment all day. If you don't have it on and a block warden comes by, there's a knock on the door. How come you're not listening to your radio? Because it's all propaganda.
Yeah, they can't brainwash you if you're not listening to it.
Well, I mean,
That's the bottom line.
This has gone along. This has gone along for so long that you watch the horrific assault on young people's imagination, their knowledge of the country, its institutions. It's massive. I mean, we talked about Common Core on here, and I've talked to people, and they say, well, you know what? I'm going to homeschool my kids. I'm going to put them into this private institution, and we're going to avoid all this damage where the whole narrative of the nation has been extracted. I say that's all well and good, and you should do that. However, there's one problem with that. When you take the vast majority of people and they go through that system and they are intentionally dumbed down and they're intentionally put into a system where there's emotional duress, you produce an ocean of people that are going to look on somebody that's educated in another fashion as an enemy. It's a process of anti-selection. Now think about this for a second, Rich. You teach your kid the classics, you teach them basic math, literature, public speaking, how to behave, all of these different things, all right? And they reach a point where they need to go into the higher academy, and they look at this SAT that's been designed by one of the same individuals that started Common Core, and all of a sudden, it's all this garbage. And if you can't regurgitate it, then you're cut off at the knees.
It's not logic for them, so they can't somebody with an education can't follow it. It's not logical. Doesn't make any sense. But the other point I wanted to make is that, especially in today's world, they've got it done away with religion. They've broken down the family. So now, as far as homeschooling, you got a lot of single parents out there who they can't teach their kids at home. How do they provide for their family?
Right.
And that's another thing. I mean, that's the biggest thing is what I see. So even if you end up, my kid's smart, well, that doesn't help society.
Mm-hmm.
You need the middle class to come back somehow.
The middle class is one of the primary facts in modern history. And it's funny, if you look at the United States, you watch the erosion of the middle class, attacks on private property, restrictions on business, the decreasing value of the dollar. You watch an erosion of the middle class. If you look at the French Revolutionary experience, one of the reasons that they had a revolution was you had a middle class trying to break out of all of these bonds and move ahead. We're going in the opposite direction. We're going backwards now.
Yeah.
And the key feature of a middle class is they have enough wealth so they can sit down, they can be involved civically, they can analyze things, they can be involved, and they can bring criticism against those institutions or individuals that supposedly represent them. So you're going to get to the point where you're on a treadmill working multiple jobs until the only thing left to do is to fall off from exhaustion and not have any idea what's going on.
Well, that happens now, Pat. I was just going to say, from 1800 to 1913, the silver dollar could buy the same thing. Right up until that point, it could buy the same thing. There was no inflation or deflation of the dollar until the central banking system goes on. And I remember people telling me, my grandparents telling me, you could buy a house for $200 or $300. Literally $200 or $300. Today, I'm looking at people spending $350,000, $400,000 on a house that, in my opinion, sucks. It really does. There's no value in what you get, and the kids don't know any better. Our kids, growing up, they have nothing to compare it to. So they're saying, I want a house. It's so-called the American dream. Well, they're not. We should be teaching our children value. If there's no value, don't buy it. And if we don't buy it, guess what? The price will come down because they're going to hang on to them, and no one's going to be making money in the real estate market or the banks. So that's what should happen, but I'm no financial expert. That's just my opinion.
The big problem they have is government has dominated education, and it's extracted so many of the things that are necessary for our particular civilization to survive, what it's based on. The United States is a country that is most definitely different than its European forebears. It's set aside, it's like George Santayana says, it's set aside psychologically. The United States basically was an answer to socialism. It could provide those things for the average person coming over here that European socialist movements called for. It's a whole different experience, and people tend not to know that, but they're cut off from their history, and they're cut off from the role of religion in the nation. That's a massive attack on religion right now. It's horrific what you see going on. It's frightening.
Well, I had a discussion with Valerie Fraser, who was on before, and I hope she doesn't mind me saying this, but I agree with her. I said, why is it some people won't listen to what the problem is? And she said, it's my experience that people who have little or no moral character or upbringing are the ones I feel, and I'm finding it to be the exact same way. Someone who's had a moral upbringing seems to get it, whereas people who don't get it. And I wanted to start talking about the racial situation. I don't know if you're prepared to switch over, Pat, but
well, I was only going to say this: that there's a principal in a school right now down in Florida. I find this hard to believe because when I was younger and I taught history, I did teach a course on the Holocaust that you had to have permission to get into. Was for juniors and seniors, and I team taught that with one other really phenomenal teacher. And this principal basically came out and said that he didn't know if the Holocaust was real or not. And they said, what are you talking about? I mean, people might argue for numbers or things like this, but there's such an overwhelming, massive amount of evidence of Germany's plan to annihilate an entire racial group that it's insurmountable. It's so stunning that these people are in these positions of authority, that they are where they are. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. I don't understand that. The only thing I've questioned is numbers before because I heard different things, but I'm not going to get into that right now. We were going to talk about what's her name, Kamala Harris, and she was talking.
I ain't talking about any of them. Cory Booker, Kamala Harris.
Well, she wanted reparations. She was talking about, and I happened to watch it last night, and I said, I'm all for reparations, but with conditions. And I wanted to make this point: go to Bush, go to Obama, go to Clinton, and then start with Congress, like Nancy Pelosi, Harry Reid. Two of the biggest traitors that I know of off the top of my head, but go all the way through Congress and take back all the money they've stolen from Americans, all right? And it's in the trillions. Don't fool yourself. It's in the trillions of dollars. And once you get that money back by taking their possessions like they took ours, I could care less who you give it to. If people have been abused, give it to them. Don't give them my tax dollars. I haven't done anything to anybody, and probably you haven't either. But these sons of bees that are running our country, they've harmed a lot of us. And I want to see some type of retribution, reparation, call it what you will. I mean, I really don't have a problem with it. I just don't want more taxes so the government grows. Let's take it from these thieves. That's my word on that.
There's a really good young historian named Orlando Figes, Figes, and he writes on Russian history. He writes in particular on the Russian Revolution. And in one of his books, he mentions trench Bolshevism. And what he's talking about is the average Russian soldier who can't read, is an illiterate, is pretty much non-political, being exhausted by 1917, fighting against the Germans and ill-equipped and hungry and shoeless. He says, and people that were already communized talking to him saying, listen, we better get back home because they're gonna divvy up the land, and the Bolsheviks are gonna put an end to this fighting. So in that way, that individual who doesn't really know anything says, yeah, I guess I'm going to be a Bolshevik. That's what half of this is. I'm going to promise you this. We're going to give reparations to them. It's Cory Booker. It's going to be a guaranteed income for everybody. And I'm saying it's trench Bolshevism. Half of this population doesn't know what's going on, and these guys are going to do exactly the same thing that happened in that country. They're going to be promised all of these things, and they're going to inherit something that's absolutely, completely, and totally different.
You're talking about under the Bolshevism thing, transferring wealth is what I see.
All right.
What I'm talking about is taking back what was stolen from us, all of us in America,
Right.
and giving it to the people who deserve it. I don't really care. You want to give it to blacks, you want to give it to Spanish, you want to give it to Indians. I don't really care. I don't care. It doesn't matter. Take it from these thieves. And I want to be really clear about that. I don't want reparations coming from the coffers of the Treasury unless it's been taken back from the thieves. Then I'm all for it. And I want to be clear about that.
Well, you know, the rank hypocrisy of these people is so evident. You talk about Kamala Harris. You know, they brought up her lineage, and her great-grandfather owned multiple slave plantations, an Irishman, owned multiple slave plantations in Jamaica, and they have the records right from the British Registry going back to 1817, and he owned a lot of them, an awful lot. And what happened was that by 1833, slavery was outlawed by the British Empire. So Harris's grandfather did the next best thing. He said, "Let me see, who can we get?" He says, "I know, the Irish are subhuman." So he made there were two different trips right after that. I think 1835, 1836. And one trip was for 120 young Irish, and the other was for like 180. So she basically is part of a slave trading lineage. So she owes money to guys in County Cork. We'll have to sing you a song, Kamala.
Like I said,
Kamala Harris, the pipes are calling. We'll settle for a case of Guinness and a gross of potatoes. You know, as Irish boys are. What a farce.
no.
What a farce.
All I can tell you about slavery is this. It's not contingent upon color of your skin or religion or any of that stuff. What it's contingent upon is, can you be exploited? And if you can, then you will be. A good classic case is what we've talked about here on the show before. Look at your driver's license and birth certificate with the all capital names. You're being trafficked through the system, and you don't know it. You don't want to know it because you say, you're a conspiracy nut, and you're too lazy to look it up. You're being trafficked. Everybody in America is being trafficked by the system. It's been put in place. You were born into it. You accepted it. It doesn't mean it's right. It's totally wrong. But you don't want to accept it.
People don't have the knowledge; they're ignorant of it, and you're living in an increasingly secularized society where people don't understand really the roots of where a lot of your rights come from. They really don't. They're cut off from all of that information.
And I agree with that, Pat. And I'm ignorant of a lot of things. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm not. But when someone says something to me, I try to look it up and find out, is this person right? Not dismiss it. Because that's crazy. You're a conspiracy nut. Well, if I am, prove that I am. Don't just say it. Prove it. Prove that I'm a conspiracy nut. Because you're being trafficked. So are your children. And if you want to let it continue and you think everything's fine, then everything's fine. I don't know what else to say.
Well, you know, it was like Albert Speer, who was Hitler's minister of production, and quite an intelligent individual. You would think he would be out of character for what went on in Germany. And he was asked during the Nuremberg trials, I think it was by Chief Justice Jackson. He said, "How could something like this happen with all of this mass murder and the way Germany's turned upside down on its head? This land of great musicians and artists and philosophers." And Speer thought about it, and he said it was the multiplicity of small and large crimes across the length and breadth of Germany converging on one central locus. That's what gave us Hitler. You look at this country today on what's going on, and you're in a very dangerous time period. It's time for the average person has got to start to stand up.
It was almost Hitlery. Okay? Hitlery.
It would have been done.
Yeah. Anyway, please watch us on YouTube, Facebook, subscribe to us, like us if you think we're any good. Check out our webpage. Thank you for watching and share. It's time to stand.